of writing methodology. The four parts we covered yesterday: type of study, design, study setting, and study sample. Today we are going to talk in detail about study variables and data collection process. So let's go into detail of how do we describe study variables. So when you make a description, we have through the previous sessions understood what is study variable. Now, what are you expected to mention in the in a paragraph in your proposal about study variables, right? So you go objective wise. So if you are dealing with more than one objective, each objective would have some study variable. So for each of those study variables, you have to mention in more detail, right? You will be what are you expected to mention is operational definition of the study variable, right? So say for example, we yesterday took the example of the pre-hospital and within hospital delays in getting care among myocardial infarction patients. So what do I mean by pre-hospital delay? So I will have to define as to what are the delays a time period. So that period has different defined points in time. So it can start from the symptom onset to, say, for example, reaching the emergency unit. So how does the second time point get defined? So I might say that I'll depend on the patient's reported hospital reporting time, or I might say that it would not be just the verbal account that the patient gives. I would insist on what is reported on the so for example, what was the time when the case paper was registered, or what was the time which is registered on the medical records, right? So there could be different definitions in recording. How would I determine for my study the time of hospital arrival? How do I decide for each patient which time of hospital arrival will I finally say that this is the time of arrival? Similarly, you'll have operational definitions. So what you usually study in your medical schools through different subjects is a theoretical definition or textbook definition of that particular definition or that particular condition that you are interested in. What here we are interested in is an operational definition. Many times those conceptual theoretical definitions might not be easy to follow in real world settings. So what we follow in real world setting might be something else. And whatever we have followed, we have to mention in methodology. Sometimes you might be dealing with complex concepts. So, say for example, you might be dealing with concepts such as anxiety, and anxiety is an abstract concept for which you might have, let's say, a 5-point or 9-point questionnaire to identify the level of patient's anxiety, right? So, if you are using such kind of an instrument or tool, you have to mention details about that. We'll come down to one such example towards the end of this section. Another part is your data collection form. So we are also going to talk a little bit more about that and the data collection process also, right? So data collection process, we are going to talk towards the end of the presentation. So when you think of your data collection form, what all are the informations that you should be collecting? So if your study is a descriptive study, and we assume that most of the ICMR STS projects involve descriptive kind of a design, the analytical design are employed by very less number of proposals. So in descriptive study, the background information of the study population, so for example, the age of the participants, gender of the participants, educational level of the participants, and the socioeconomic status of the participants, or do the participants belong to rural, urban, or tribal area? And something of that sort, right? The background information might also include the clinical information, such as, say, for example, the disease that the patient presents with, or the clinical severity of the disease, or something of that sort. Then, information on the study variable per se. Right? In analytical studies, we do collect all of those two informations, background information and information on study variables or information on outcomes. So say, for example, yesterday we talked about a study which was trying to find out the effect of the weight of school bag on the prevalence of backache among school children, right? So in that case, the weight of school bag becomes an intervention, right? So you might have to actually weigh the school bag and record the actual measurements. the outcome is backache, right? So you have to define some methodology as to how do you ask that to the students. So a proportion of children with backache or the different severity of backache you might be interested in identifying, or you might also be interested in asking the students, was the backache severe enough that you actually needed a medical consultation, right? So you'll come out with what proportion of students needed medical consultation for their backache in both the groups, right? So as you start thinking, you realize that it's not just one question. You might many a times ask more than one question to collect information on the study variable of your interest. Confounders are the other factors which can affect your outcome. So, say for example, in this study where the outcome is backache for the student, the other confounding variables could be that the student might have other comorbidities which might lead to backache. So, say for example, there are multiple reasons why you would have, any adolescent would have backache. One of the common reasons is, let's say, vitamin B12 deficiency might also lead to backache. So, and then there could be many others as well. So if you can collect information on those variables, it would be good. Right? So it would be good if when we create our data collection form, we are very focused as to what's the purpose of having that particular question. So this is a sample data collection form. That goes into the entire form is a simple form, is a one-pager form, and I've taken two screenshots. One is at the upper part of the form, and on the next slide we'll also go to the lower part of the form. Now I'll request probably Supriya, Samiksha, if Samiksha is available, to tell me what does Samiksha find in this data collection form. What are the elements that you could identify?
Yes, sir.
Samiksha, what you see on your screen is a screenshot of a data collection form. So if you read this form, what are the different elements that you find which are kept here? If this was a sample data collection form and you were to prepare your own, what elements would you keep in mind while you are creating the data collection form for your study?
The name of the survey is given, the purpose of the survey is given,
Okay.
and like the questions that we are asking the respondents, like the age, gender, and like the following questions.
Okay. Do you find
Do you
anything
find
else?
it?
So yes, wish to share something?
The
Or
name
anybody
of the principal investigator and their contact details are given.
Yeah. So this would be helpful when, say, for example, you are taking help of other people also for data collection, right? So there, if you give your contact information, it would be helpful. Anything else? Other people also, please feel free to comment. What do you observe here? So yes, you wish to share? Okay. So the other important thing mentioned here is probably you can mention as to what would be the time taken to complete the survey. Many times we are using surveys which are administered electronically. So anybody who starts filling up an electronic form, if we tell them upfront as to it will take 5 minutes, 7 minutes of your time, probably the person is more likely to fill if the time is reasonably okay. Right. Other things that we see is a clear direction as to how the responses are expected to be marked. Right. So here's, for example, if the tick mark is expected, they have also given square boxes. So person understand that I'm expected to tick mark in the boxes only. Or another good method would be we ask them not to tick mark but encircle. So we have options such as ABC and we ask them to encircle ABC, the alphabets. Right? On the next slide, this is the extension of questions. So can somebody tell me what are the elements that we observed here? Devansh, if you are around, can you tell me? Is there something specific here that we can use?
Yes, sir. It the if we take one particular question, it refers to an refers to the another question as well. So if we take question 4, then it also tells us to go to question 7 as well.
Yeah. So yes. So we call it as skips and jumps. So if the answer to previous question is no and the next two questions are not applicable in that scenario, you skip those two questions and directly jump to the next question. Okay? So such kind of, so when multiple people are expected to participate in data collection, it would be good to give such skip and jump instructions within the questionnaire. Right? So that makes the data collection easy. Many times if you are using a paper based questionnaire and if you are expecting your study participant to fill the questionnaire, it would be good to give those instructions so that it becomes easy for the participants, right? So that was just a very example of a very simple study questionnaire and some of the important tips that you can incorporate in your study data collection form. Now, when you are setting up to put up the questions in your data collection form, the questions primarily can be of two types. One is an open-ended question, which is what causes your pain and wisdom tooth flare up. And then there is one or two blank lines given where the participant can write anything that they feel like as the cause for the flare up. Or it could be converted into a close-ended question where the question reads that from the list of following options, choose what causes your wisdom pain to flare up. And then the participant is given multiple choices, also the last option others, right? And the participant is allowed to take more than one option as well. So in research, in quantitative research, it will usually be preferred that you utilize the approach which is on the right side rather than on the left side, right? Because we wish to be very specific and focused and meticulous in our research. So you usually prefer to use close-ended questions. So if my questionnaire contains 15 questions, except one or two questions where I might receive open-ended replies, usually it would be most of my questions has to be close-ended questions. Another important advice is when you have multiple options and you want to allow participants multiple responses in the time of data entry, it would be good to create separate column for each one of them, right? We'll come down to that when we talk about data entry. The next important concept is measurement scale. So for each of our questions in our study questionnaire, it would be good to identify which is the measurement scale on which we are collecting information. So let's very quickly understand the measurement scale. This comes from our basics of bio statistics. So nominal scale is, let's say, gender of the research participant. The categories are male, female, and others. Ordinal scale, the example is habit of missing breakfast among adolescents. So someone who does not miss or one to twice per week, 3 to 4 times per week and more, right? So we see that there is a difference between these two examples. In second example in the middle, the order makes some sense, right? So someone who misses 1 to 2 times per week is missing a little more quantity than who is not missing at all. Someone who is missing 3 to 4 times is missing a little more quantity than someone who misses only once or twice per week, right? So the order matters, and hence we call also both of them, the one on the left and one in the middle, are categories, right? In the middle, the order matters, and what we see on the left, the order does not matter, right? So where the order does not matter, those we call it as the variable is measured on a nominal scale. We have names. In an ordinal scale, we have categories where the order matters. We might have questions where the responses are not classified into categories, but they come up in numbers. So, for example, age. So we write the number, but it would be good when you are capturing information in terms of numbers. It would be good to have some idea as to what is the range, right? So on the next slide, we are going to see a concept which goes by the name data codebook. And this is how the data codebook might look like. So probably I'll ask Devansh to tell me that what does he understand when he looks something like this.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. What I can see is I can see the questions and the type of the questions. For example, age. If it is age, then it would be a numerical answer for that particular question. Then if it is gender, then it would be nominal. I think nominal would be just a, a two or more option answer, and then education of respondent would be ordinal. I think that would be based on a specific sequence of events that would happen. For example, in education, there is schooling and then graduation and so on. And then the fourth question, it says, did you smoke tobacco in the any form in the last 30 days? So that would be also nominal. That would be either no or yes. And the rest of the questions also are based on numerical, a specific number is there.
Okay. So, there's a third column which says that the range of possible answers. So in categories, we just mention all the possible categories and probably mention others as well. And probably so for example, if you are going forward with paper-based data collection, you might wish to enter, right? So when you are entering into an Excel sheet, data entry, probably if you code the possible categories, it would be better. It would make your data entry job easier. Uh, when the measurement scale is numerical, it will always be a good idea to have something in mind as to what could be the range of possible answers, right? And then skip jumps also you can mention here. And the last one is plan for summarization, right? So anything which is measured in numerical scale, you usually would summarize them using mean and standard deviations, or you use median and interquartile range. For nominal and ordinal data, you would usually summarize them in terms of proportion. So when we'll be talking about next week, sorry, we'll be talking about the data management and statistics plan, we'll be using that information, right? So, Devansh, do you feel that if we create, how easy do you feel that you find creating a data documentation sheet? Do you see any need for creating such kind of a data code book?
Yes, sir. I think this would be beneficial as this is this is specific for different types of questions as well, and the possible answers are also seen. So I think yes, this would be beneficial.
Okay. So one more reason. So it looks like it's too much of work because your data collection form might have many questions, right? So whatever columns of this code book that you can fill up, you can
Who
go
is
for. So for example, at present, if you just write the serial number, question, measurement scale, and possible answers, even that would be good enough, right? But if you make such kind of data code book, it will make the a lot of other tasks easier for you. When also it makes our data collection form a little more concise. So, for example, when we have to do so much of work, we'll realize that uh, do I really need to collect information for on this particular aspect, or I can easily skip that, right? So it helps you make your data collection form more precise, right? So that was one. Now we have given a blank template of such a data collection code book with you in a Word document, and it's shared on your Google Classroom, right? So now one of the elements of the proposal, the last element is quality assurance, or how do we ensure quality control? So data code book is something that really good researchers really make use of. And but if you look at the common literature available on research methodology and proposal writing, you might not find this, right? So this, if you can, let's say, prepare a data code book and probably keep it as annexures as towards the end of your study protocol. This is something which you can actually claim in quality control, saying that we prepared a data code book to ensure that our data collection form captures information on the relevant variables and it is concise, right? So you can actually mention this as one of the quality control measures as well, and that would probably help you stand out your proposal from the other proposals, give you a competitive advantage. So when you are developing the study instrument, you would probably, what are the sources of such instruments is that you might have come across similar studies, and when you look at the results table, you can guess as to what could be the study instrument for possibly be looking like. if you make an email to the author, probably they will also be able to share you the data collection form that they use in their study. Sometimes the data collection form used in the study is also available as annexures in the supplementary file, right? Or there might be, so for example, if we are using pre-formed questionnaires, study tools available, so for example, for measuring anxiety, uh, those validated tools or maybe translated validated tools would be available, and you can use them and refer to them and use them. Right? While you do that, whether you are using any pre-formed tool or you are developing a tool of your own, it's important to think of validity. Now, what is validating? Validating means that your tool captures only that information which is pertaining to your study objective. It does not capture anything else, right? When we are using preform tools, many times those preform tools are initially generated to be used by in English language. And let's say it is important that a translated version is available and translated version is also validated, right? So translated version validation means that even the translated version measures what it intends to measure, right? And measure it correctly. So please make sure that if, let's say, you are using a tool which is available in English, but it's not available in local language, probably you will have to validate the translated version. You'll have to translate the version in local language and validate it, right? So that itself might be a separate study objective, that you will create a validated version of the translated study tool, right? One of the common errors that we have identified is that people, so for example, there is a temptation when you start the study, you feel like so much of information is available. Why not I go and collect a lot of information, right? So the study tool tends to be very longer and lengthier, right? And the lengthier the one, the quality of data collection hampers. So imagine you are going out with a study with having only 10 questions in your study instrument. Compare that to you are going out with for a study where the question your data collection form has 30 questions, right? So it will take more time, you'll be exhausted. So the quality of data collection would be different when the tool is very longer, right? So usually it is recommended in research that you include only those many number of questions which are required in your study objectives, right? So we defined them on the previous slide, saying that background information of participants and information on study variables, that's it, nothing more, right? So limit the number. Relate with dummy tables. So the next week sessions are going to talk about, we are going to create dummy tables, which means that when we will be publishing our results in the form of a report or publication, our results would be in tabular form. So right now at the proposal writing stage itself, we'll try and imagine how our tables would look like. We call them as dummy tables because we don't have the data right now, but we still have the framework. We still have the skeleton and outline of how our tables would look like, right? So when we create dummy tables, we'll realize that in my dummy table, I am probably going to summarize only that much amount of information. And I still have questions on my data collection form, which I'm probably not going to summarize as use towards the end, right? So probably they are the candidates who can be removed from my data collection form. It would always be a good idea to create a first draft, get it peer reviewed. So ask any of your friends, look at it and give you suggestions. How can we improvise? Give it to the guide and devise. Finally, once you prepare a revised version, it will always be a good idea to pilot test and see that to the best of your understanding, you created a questionnaire, but are your participants able to understand what you are trying to assess or check? Or how do they find it acceptable, or how much of time do your participants take in filling up the question? So all of that information will come from pilot testing, and pilot testing would also help us improvise our study questionnaire. So these were the steps in developing the study tool. And there are multiple names for this. People call it as study questionnaire, people call it as data collection tool, data collection form, or study instruments. More or less at undergraduate level, all of them mean more or less the same thing. So this is, so for example, a description of the study tool, right? That we are expected to write in the study proposal. So what exact paragraph are we going to write? So I'm taken one example of a previous article. This is one of the studies that we did. The study was on prevalence and predictors of suicide ideation among undergraduate medical students from a medical college. So this is how we describe the study tool. So in the proposal, the study tool might be described like this. So the study instrument was a semi-structured questionnaire, right? So if you have even one question which is open-ended, you call it as semi-structured. If you have all questions which are close-ended, you call it as a structured questionnaire. It was in English language because we felt that the students could answer the questions in English. We took the liberty to administer it in English language. It was to be administered by students themselves and not the study investigator. And we administered them in electronic form, right? So it was a Google form, not paper-based. Questions on, now look at the next paragraph, which talks about how the study instrument was developed. So you can use, this kind of a concept to also share with the reviewer as to how did you develop the questionnaire. The questions on suicidality to be included in the survey questionnaire were decided by reviewing available literature, and we have cited two similar studies. Study questionnaire was validated for content by 2 experts in psychiatry and 1 expert in research. So this is the peer review that we are referring to, right? This is not a formal validation process, since it was very straightforward and we were not measuring something which is very abstract. So we have just mentioned that it was peer reviewed by 3 people. Questionnaire was pilot tested on a group of 30 students. So we have also mentioned the numbers, right? So you can mention that you are expecting it to be pilot testing among what many number of students to see feasibility in terms of acceptability and ease of understanding by the students. The participants are students in this case. Responses of pilot testing phase were not included in the final data. Questionnaire was divided into 3 parts: the background information, screening on depression, and suicidality. So we are talking, on the next slide, I am mentioning the 2 out of the 3 parts in the interest of time. So the first part collected demographic, family, and personal attributes of the students. Second part was where a preformed tool was used, right? So which focus on measuring the depression, and we used one particular tool which is already available in scientific literature, right? So the tool goes by the name Patient Health Questionnaire, short form PHQ-9, and we have also given a reference. We are mentioning that it's a 9-item questionnaire. So when you are using preformed tools, always mention how many items are there in that particular questionnaire. Each question on PHQ is scored from a scale of 0 to 3. So this is an additional information which you can mention. Please understand that unless you have given the tool in the annexure, it would be difficult for the reviewer to identify as to how the tool might look like or what are the actual questions within the tool, right? So it would be good to clarify it at the outset that it was 0 to 3, where 0 meant what, 1 and 2 meant what, and so on, right? So this was for each question. Now, whenever you are using any tool, it would usually come out with a score. So score may be anything out from 0 to 10 or from 0 to 15 or something like that, right? So although it would be obvious when someone reads that article about that particular tool, it's obvious, but don't expect that the reviewer would already be aware about the tools that you are referring to. So it would be always good to mention explicitly that the possible score on this questionnaire is ranging from this to that, and the range is also categorized. That 0 is, let's say, no depression, 1 to 4 is minimal depression, and so on, right? Also, all such tools having scores would have some cutoff which defines the presence of a particular element or event or phenomenon, right? So in this case, we wish to define that a cutoff score of 10 or more is used to define depression, right? So anybody having a score of 10 or more is labeled with a temporary state of depression, right? So that's important. So these are the common things that you should be mentioning if you are using a preformed tools, right? So those 2 slides gave us some example as to what all things do we need to mention about the data collection form.